Hi, my name's Dan. I'm the ranger for Rewilding, a brilliant charity that's been set up, and I'm employed on a traineeship through this scheme called New to Nature, which is kind of run by the Youth Environmental Service and Groundwork, a way of getting young people into green jobs, which is super exciting, and I'm super grateful to be here. I've been invited by Little Green Change to have a bit of a talk about rewilding, kind of what it means, why we've got it and why it's so desperately needed. Um, the top line of it, rewilding, is kind of like a new sort of nature conservation technique and a method that's kind of been developed over the past sort of 10, maybe 20 years, um, looking at big landscapes, getting in sort of those missing pieces of puzzles, to try and tackle the sort of biodiversity crisis that we're in. But before we go into it too much, it's probably best to have a little kind of look at some context, some history, um, why we're in the place that we are in at the moment. So yeah, if we get into that, some good stats on the screen here. They're not very good, they're just very popular. We've lost 90% of our wetlands. Wetlands are sort of like the bogs, the lakes, ponds, all that watery goodness. We've actually lost so much of it. That's since the Industrial Revolution. And then that next stat in the middle there, very popular one with a lot of people, 97%. That's an incredible amount of our wildflower meadows that have been destroyed since the Second World War. If you've ever been in wildflower meadow, you'll see and you'll hear the buzz of the insects and stuff. Crazy places. And then that final stat there, 13% of woodland cover across the UK. Compare that to European average of about 40%. We're well below what we need to have in terms of our trees and stuff like that. One other thing that's not on this list is actually it's not really a stat, but it's just in general how much the UK has this kind of culture of tidying the landscape. When was the last time you went for a walk and you saw like a fallen tree down in a field, and there's cows around it and stuff? Like that doesn't happen anymore. We've got rid of all that sort of dead stuff. We like to keep things tidy. We like to cut our hedges and stuff, which isn't very good for wildlife. We don't like that. On this next slide, you see we've got this lovely graph. Some people love graphs, some people hate graphs. I don't mind them. This one's quite a nice one. Really shows you how much our biodiversity has declined. Biodiversity is this term that we use for kind of the variety of wildlife and plants in sort of a given area. So in our country, we've gone from, in 1970, they basically pointed they started recording things and they set this baseline of 1 as this index. And since then, we've actually declined to about 0.3 or something. So that's like a 70% loss in our biodiversity. In other terms, if from this point, if you go back, say, 50 years, we would have seen 3 times as much wildlife, which kind of doesn't make sense. Seems kind of mental now when you think about it. If you've ever talked to your grandparents or even your parents, perhaps they might have mentioned that back when they were a child, they'd be driving along the roads and you'd sort of get so many like insects and stuff, bugs on your cars, you'd have to constantly clean your cars. And we don't really get that to that extent anymore. One big gripe that I have with this graph is that it starts at 1970. I don't know if you can see my cursor here. It really should go back further. The biodiversity loss in this country hasn't been going on since 1970. It's been going on so many more years, since the Stone Age when we were killing off the big woolly mammoths, killing off the wild cows, the wild ponies and stuff. So it's not looking good for us. But since this 1970 point, it's kind of when traditional conservation started. So, charities, if you've ever heard of them, like the RSPB, National Trust, all the wildlife trusts, they kind of started doing things about this trend, and they were buying bits of land that already had high biodiversity, populations of animals that were threatened, that were we were seeing these big decreases, and they managed them as humans in a way that protected certain habitats and certain species. But as you can see from the graph, it's not worked. It's not really worked since 1970. It's kind of worked for small individual species, but it's not worked in general the UK's wildlife. And that's kind of where rewilding kicks in, you know. It's this new technique where we're looking at huge landscapes, looking at a big scale, and it's all about restoring these ecosystem functions. That might be a really odd term for you, totally understandable. But I can sort of break it down. An ecosystem is kind of like a geographical area where you've got plants, animals, living organisms, the land, the weather, all mashing around in harmony. And like a healthy ecosystem is one where all the populations are stable, they're thriving, they kind of mingle and doing this, but they're not going extinct, they shouldn't go extinct and stuff like that. And then an ecosystem function is just like how everything behaves inside that. So to restore the ecosystem functions, you kind of go through a few steps. One of the first steps is repairing previous human damage. So what we've done in the UK and across the globe is actually like change the landscape. We modified it, we farmed it, we've blah de blah de blah. And so one of the first steps actually to repair that damage. We're talking about renaturalizing water, sort of renaturalizing sort of the rivers and the streams, digging more lakes, all those like that 90% of wetlands we lost, we want to bring them back kind of thing. And once you've repaired that damage, you can then start thinking about bringing in sort of the missing species that you've lost. These are called keystone species, the ones that have the real big impacts. There's kind of a couple on the slide here, those ponies and then the beaver on the right. And these keystone species, those real crucial pieces in the puzzle, they're the ones that are going to sort of modify and control and renaturalize just the entire landscape. They're going to design it, they're going to manage it. It's not going to be us. And then the final step of sort of restoring these ecosystem functions, just giving it enough space. I've sort of used the word landscape quite a lot. I'm talking, kilometers and kilometers and kilometers of space. And that's just basically to allow nature to breathe. It needs space, it needs time to do what it wants to do. And it's going to be in charge, not us. So what we've done previously with nature conservation, targeting these little pockets of land, we've been the ones that have gone in and gone, right, we'll do this for this species. Whereas now it's actually, we're going to be adding these species in and going, what do you want from it? Telling nature, just give them a little nudge, and then they'll go and eat bits, they'll go and poo somewhere or something. And it's like, that's telling us what nature wants to do. So we just kind of let it at that point be what it wants to be. And I love this slide, the ecosystem engineer slide. No one's probably going to know what ecosystem engineer is, but they're these the creatures that design the landscape. Humans have been designing the landscape so much, but if we allow these ecosystem engineers, which are basically, for the most part, large herbivores, so cows, pigs, ponies, and deer. We've got loads of them around. Why don't we utilize them in a wildlife-friendly way? Research has shown over the past 10 or 20 years that the best, the most natural, most biodiverse habitat for large parts of the UK is where these animals sort of living in small densities. Is what it would have been like way back in the day. You would have had all these wild animals kind of roaming, in small densities, and they're the ones that graze. They all graze differently, so they all eat the plants differently. All their poo is very different and stuff, and they move around the landscape, and they're the ones that shape it. There's this big battle between sort of trees growing and the animals eating those trees, and that battle, that's flow and ebb and flow of what we call, the sort of the meadows of the grass, and then the scrub with like those really thorny plants that no one likes but are really good for wildlife, and then the trees and the woodlands and stuff. So yeah, that's what we want, is that really good sort of mix of habitats. And I will now show you a lovely slide that you can pause on. This is a really good one to just take a few notes. You can see kind of what rewilding means, what conservation means. They both have their place in UK sort of nature recovery. As you can see there, conservation is definitely much, as I've said, targeting those species that we know are declining fast and need to have some space for that. And then rewilding is talking about, in general, bigger landscapes, the bigger picture kind of thing, and being nature-led. It's not human-led, it's nature-led. So have a little pause of that and write some notes. And now I will show you a picture by Rewilding Britain. Rewilding Britain are this sort of UK charity that have been promoting rewilding for quite some time now. And they brought out these two images. This is the first one. It's basically like an image of what the UK kind of looks like now, targeted mostly at the uplands. So you can see the hills there and small villages, a bit further away in sort of rural and countryside. And what I'd quite like you to do is just sort of pause the video again, go through a bit of an exercise, and just take some notes of what's here. Like talk about the features of the landscape. So I'll give you an example. This very straight road, runs through the valley with a very straight river next to it. That's a human thing that's happened. And then we'll have a look at the species. Again, write down just how many species, maybe name them if you can. I'll give you one. There's a little crow, sat on the bottom right next to some grass here. I think it's a crow, could be a jackdaw or something, some sort of black bird, But yeah, just take 2 minutes, have a little look at that, and that's what it looks like now. Now I'm going to show you what it could look like, and this is incredible. This is rewilding in principle, in a way. This is the vision. For us in the UK, it's the dream. It kind of looks a bit like something like Narnia. Looks like kind of out of this world, like it shouldn't be there, but it's very real. It's what places like Norway look like. So across Europe, it is happening, and I think it's crazy how some people think this is impossible. But in reality, it's actually quite easy to do. There's just a huge shift that needs to happen. Again, this is a really good point. Pause the video, take some time to do that same exercise with the last slide and just have a look, see what things have changed, see the landscape that you can those features that you can point out. I'll use the road as an example. The road's actually been moved to the side of the hill. So you can see with my cursor on the right here, and then the water, the river, has been allowed to just renaturalize. That flow of the water it started meandering. There's multi-channels, so it's not just one single straight channel, and that has huge effects. And the other exercise after doing that is, counting the species and the landscape and stuff, is just have a think about how humans fit into this landscape. If I go back the slide, actually, have a think about what humans are doing at the moment in the UK and where you can see them in this picture. So the little farm down in the bottom there, that's probably a couple people farming some land over however many blah blah blah. Whereas in the next slide, we can actually see that farm's grown. There's a community orchard. There's also this lovely beaver pond down here, and you can't really see it in this picture, but you could have people like stand-up paddleboarding on there, kayaking. There's a whole host of ecotourism things. There's a few horse riders over here. So yeah, have a think about how humans fit into that landscape. Super cool, super exciting, and it's kind of good for everyone. And I'll now, it's probably now time for me to plug my charity, Heal Rewilding. It's kind of the best bit. No, I'm joking. We were set up as a charity in 2020, just as we went into lockdown, actually. And the goal is very, very simple. We want to raise money, we want to buy land, and then rewild it. And it's just a phenomenal kind of ambition that we've got going. And the name Heal comes from the fact that we want to heal the land, and then we want to heal the climate. We've got a big climate crisis. You all know about that, hopefully. And then we've also got heal ourselves. So the people, big well-being issue at the moment going on, and it all links in. We link in with nature and stuff. So yeah, it's a brilliant charity. We're the first charity to do this on a national scale. Buying land for rewilding, and the goal is to have a new rewilding site in every English county. So at the moment, we've actually bought our first site in December of 2022. I'll talk about that in a second. But we're looking at buying another site in the north next, and then across the UK. And it'll be, land about 500 acres in size, with basically not much going on, like very little wildlife. And the idea is to rewild it and boost that biodiversity and stuff. So yeah, the site that we've got at the moment is my office, which is super cool, super fun. It's called Heal Somerset. It's 460 acres, old dairy farm. This is kind of what it looked like previously, like when we bought it. You can see in the background farm there, and then all these fields, all these green fields are ours. And there's just not really much, it's just green grass, and that only supports grass and cows basically. There's very, very few insects, very few birds and stuff. And so the idea then is to rewild this site, and we'll hopefully bring in those big herbivores, the pigs, the cows, the ponies in low numbers, so they don't just trash the place. We want to have that low density battle with the trees and stuff. And then when that's rewilded, hopefully we'll see a massive boost in biodiversity, the wildlife and the insects and the birds and stuff like that. So I can run through a few pictures. At the moment, in the summer when we first bought it, last year we had some buttercups here and there, but in reality, it's not that much compared to what it could be. What we found, having left the grass to grow quite a lot, is that it's kind of gone all tufty, and we've got this lovely thatched layer of grass that's now building up on the soil, and that's really good for little mammals. So think of sort of mice and voles and stuff, and that population of mammals that's exploded because this grass is really good then for birds of prey. So kestrels, barn owls, super cool. Go look them up. We've seen loads of them, and they absolutely love it. We've also got, a couple of ponds that have been artificially dug. We're hoping to renaturalize the water flow across our site, because water's the bringer of life, and when you've got life, you've got biodiversity, etc., etc. Super, super cool. Glorious views. It is really peaceful out here. We've had so many people just say it's so quiet and peaceful, which is nice, but we almost don't want it to be quiet because we want lots of kind of bird song and insects and stuff, and that buzz of wildlife. Which will come. And this is a really bad picture of an oak. It's just seeing the natural regeneration of trees. So, we're probably not be planting trees because that's actually like an unnatural method of doing it. If you block out, if you keep a low density of those big grazers, those big herbivores, then you'll actually find all the trees and stuff will grow anyway. They'll grow through those thorny plants that protect them. We've got a few wildflowers here and there, which is really nice. The insects are loving them. We had quite a lot of things like thistle and stuff that supported loads of butterflies last year. So really excited for the summer coming up, to see what's changed. And this is a really good picture here of just how a tree is growing through sort of bramble and stuff. This lovely sort of scrubby habitat where the animals can't get to the tree to eat it. It's the tree's grown into a fully grown tree, and that becomes then a little pocket, a little area for birds to nest and insects to love and thrive in. So yeah, this is our river flooding. Lovely. It's brilliant. It's so good. Check us out. We're on socials, so Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Heal Rewilding, just one word. And then if you want to check out our website as well, healrewilding.org.uk. And yeah, it's brilliant. It's such a fun and exciting project to be involved with, and I'm personally very lucky. I feel very privileged to be helping out. But yeah, definitely, hopefully inspired a few of you to think about rewilding, look at some green jobs. Think about your career and how we can help and sort of curb that massive biodiversity loss that we talked about earlier on. So yeah, that's it from me, and thank you very much for listening.